So we're back for another episode or edition of Roadie Storytime, where I'm just going to sit back, tell some stories about wild stuff that's happened on tour. And we're live on Twitch again. Hello, Twitch chat. If you're watching on YouTube later, you can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech, where we do stuff like this and do reactions and talk about other stuff. And I like doing this like live on Twitch, because there's kind of an audience, and I feel like storytelling is better when you actually have people that are there. I mean, not that we're all in the same room or anything, but you know what I mean. In my previous story, I told the tale of how I accidentally became a roadie, and the first band that I ever worked for was a band called Red. And I finished that story by mentioning that they were the first and only band that's also fired me. So today, I want to dive into that story about the first time that I got fired. I mean, technically I quit, but they fired me, but we'll get into that later. So anyways, like I said, my first gig in the music industry was working for Red, and I originally started out as a merchandise manager and lighting director. I worked for Red for a couple of years. It was actually a little over 2 years. And during that time, when I was like really cutting my teeth as a roadie and learning how tour worked, I wanted to learn a lot of other things. And I fell into that kind of situation where I kind of just said yes to everything because I wanted to learn. So at one point, they wanted to do pyro on a tour, and they didn't have the budget to bring out another crew person to do pyro. So they actually paid for my certification for pyro, and I learned how to do that. So on a tour, I was also doing pyro on top of doing merchandise. I wasn't doing lighting at that point, but at another point, they wanted to hire another backline tech to do drums and bass. And I just figured, hey, I can do this stuff too to learn. So I started bass teching, and then I started drum teching. And at the time, their drummer was Joe Rickard, who wound up leaving the band eventually. He drummed for In Flames for a while. Now he's a producer in LA. Learned a lot from that guy, man. I was a great person to tech for and learn a lot about drums. But I started getting to a point where I feel like I took on way too many things. And I feel like if there's any other people that are watching this that are roadies or worked in the music industry, that's a trap that a lot of people fall into. Is they say yes to a lot of things. They wear multiple hats, as we say. And usually, especially when you're first starting out, your pay raises do not really increase with that because you're young and you're naive and you don't really know better. So you kind of just say yes to everything and still get paid like shit, which looking back on it now was definitely the case. By 2011, which is the final year that I worked for Red, I was doing drum teching, bass teching, merchandise. I was doing basically anything they asked me to do. And I was making $150 per show day. So that means if we did 4 shows in a week, I would make $600. Was not getting pay on days off or anything like that. And in my first story, I told you that my first show pay was $75 per show. So in the course of 2 years, I got a $75 raise. And there were times where I had gone to them and asked them for more money, and the answer that I was always told was just, we don't have the budget for it. And they're like, okay, you know, whatever. And again, young, didn't really know how to negotiate, didn't know any better. And our crew was only 3 people at that time. It's our tour manager / front of house engineer, myself doing bass, drums, merchandise, lighting, pyro, whatever else needed to be done, and then our guitar tech, who was just the guitar tech. So where we really want to focus on this story is, again, late 2011. The final tour that I did with Red was the first iteration of the... Oh, what was that tour called? Hold on. I think I have the tour pass up here somewhere.
A few moments later.
It was the first iteration of the Rock Allegiance tour. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I don't think it's still going on. Basically a butt rock tour. For those of you that don't know, butt rock is our term we use a lot in the US for like radio rock bands. Because those radio stations, like, you're listening to WKQX, we don't play anything but rock. You know, so you'll kind of get where I'm going with this when I list the bands off. But from headliner to opener, it was Papa Roach.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
Co-headlining with Buckcherry.
Hey, y'all crazy bitch, but you're so good I'm on top of it.
Followed by Puddle of Mud.
I need to feel you. You need to feel me.
P.O.D. Red, and Crossfade.
What I really meant to say.
And there was another opening band too. They were an unsigned band that bought on. I can't remember. Oh, they were called Drive A. They were like a punk band from LA. So a lot of those bands on that tour actually already knew each other because we had done a lot of shows with Papa Roach, Buck Cherry, Puddle Mud, P.O.D. So it was kind of a family reunion tour. It was really nice. But that tour for me was mentally not good because, as I said, I was doing a ton of jobs and I started getting to the point where I felt like I was highly underpaid. And I had found out right before that tour. And this is why I do feel it's important that roadies talk to each other about like what they're getting paid. So I'm not saying you should go out and tell everybody what you're getting paid, but if you know somebody on your tour well enough and you guys want to like really know what's going on and take care of each other, like you can discuss pay if you're comfortable with it, because then you know where like the industry standards are. I found out that our guitar tech at the time, who was just guitar teching, nothing else, where I was doing like 4 jobs, was getting paid like $300 a show, somewhere around there, maybe a little less. I can't remember, but I know it was considerably more than I was making. And I got kind of pissed about it because I had kept getting told that they just didn't have the budget. They couldn't afford to pay me more. Yet I'm doing a handful of jobs where another person is just doing one and was getting paid way more than me. And I had been there longer too. Yeah. So that tour for me, I was kind of getting resentful, like mentally. And I was kind of having some clashes with the band members about stuff. And I'll fully admit, like, I kind of stopped caring as much as I should have. Because I think I'd worked it into my mind that, like, if I don't get a raise and things don't get better, that I was going to quit and go try and work for another band anyways. Karen Kruger in chat just said they were fucking me over. You know, even with my experience now looking back on it, I don't know if they were intentionally trying to fuck me over, but they definitely... And it might not have been them. It could have been their management. There probably definitely was a little sense of me being young and naive and not knowing any better and getting taken advantage of a little, for sure. Because that happens in the industry all the time. This is not a thing that is unique to this band. Like, that's why I always tell people, like, ask for what you're worth. When you're negotiating your pay on a tour, it's kind of funny because management or a band will always ask you what your rate is. And then usually the roadie that's getting hired will be like, well, what's your budget? Because the hiring party doesn't want to pay a ton. And the person that's getting the job wants to not say too high of a number to lose out on the job. And I think there's a big sense of that in this industry where managers and bands kind of know that the ball is in their court with that. But I'm at the point now where it's like, I just tell people, I'm like, this is my day rate and that's it. So like, I'm not working for less than that. Of course, when you are a roadie, exceptions can be made because it's up to you on whether you want to take a gig or not. So like, that's why I always say, like, if you've accepted a rate on a gig and you go out on that gig and you're unhappy about your rate, you did negotiate it. So on the next tour, you need to negotiate better, or you just say no and find a different gig. But anyways, back to the story. We get on this tour and I was just kind of mentally over it anyways. And what kind of kicked all of this off was, like, I had started drinking a little bit. I wouldn't say my like alcoholism had truly really kicked in yet. That's another story for another time. And I've talked about my sobriety on this channel too, but I had started drinking like right when they finished their set, which they were the 3rd band out of like 8. And so I'd be at the merch table, like drinking, and there'd be some nights where I just kind of fucking didn't care. And I remember there was one night, the venue was in Florida somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was an odd venue. It was an old motel that was shaped like a U, like where there was like 2 stories. There's the downstairs and there was a balcony. And then there was a pool in the middle, and they had built a stage in this old hotel courtyard by the pool. Yeah, thank you. Big Buddy in chat just said Janice Landing. That is the venue I'm talking about. Yes. So after this show, I'll fully admit I was kind of drunk, and I went to settle out merchandise that night because we weren't fully selling that night. The venue was. And when I'm settling out merchandise, they give me the cash at the end of the night, and I just put it in my pocket. And, you know, I should have went right to the bus immediately and gotten rid of the cash, but I didn't that night. I just kept it in my pocket. And then I started talking to other people because the show was over. And a lot of the band and crew at that point had started like jumping in the pool. And they had this really high, like high-rise, like diving board there. And they were like, come on, dude, fucking do like a flip off there or something. And I'm like, I was that guy when I was younger that if people wanted me to do something, I was just like, yeah, I'll do it because I wanted to be that guy. I'm kind of drunk. I get up on this high rise in my clothes and I just like do front flip into the pool and everybody's laughing and cheering, whatever. And eventually I go back to the bus and I get on the bus and I'm sitting there like I'm starting to dry off and stuff. And the tour manager's like, hey, do you have the cash for merch? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I just pull out this stack of cash. I can't remember how much it was. It was definitely under $1,000, but it was a stack of cash. And it was soaked because I jumped in the pool. And I handed it to my tour manager and he's like, what the fuck is this? And I'm just like, oh, that's how they gave it to me. I literally said that. Like anybody would believe that. I was like, that's how they gave it to me. That's how the merch people at Janice Landing paid us out. And our tour manager's like, are you fucking kidding me? And I stuck to that story. I was like, no, dude, that's how they gave it to me. He's like, you sure you didn't jump into the pool with the merch money on you? I was like, no, that's how they gave it to me. And we got into an argument, and two of the band members it was Anthony and Randy, their guitar player and bass player, were in the front lounge of the bus with us. The tour manager and I get into an argument, and I can't remember what he said or what I said, but at one point he took the stack of money that was soaking wet and fucking bitch slapped me across the face with it. I know I said something really fucking horrible or offensive to him, and he fucking slapped me with it. And I fucking jumped out of my seat so fast. And the two band members, Anthony and Randy, who are big dudes, like they are like, well, they're twins. They're both like 6'1", 6'2", probably like fucking 230 pounds, just jacked. They fucking grabbed me and threw me back down in the seat like it hard and were like, don't do anything. And I said something to the tour manager again. I might have called him a bitch or something like that. And while they're holding me down, he bitch slaps me across the face again with the wet money. So I tried to get out of my seat to go after him, and they fucking like pushed me down and held me down. And I think that was the point where I just like was like, okay, I'm done for the night. And like I changed, was going to get in my bunk and go to sleep. That night I was so drunk that right before I went to bed, I was going to the bathroom in the bus, and I was standing up taking a leak, and I was looking at my cell phone. And I dropped my cell phone into the toilet and fried my cell phone. I think it was an iPhone 3 at the time or some shit. So I didn't have a phone for the rest of the tour, which was stupid. So I go to bed that night, and the next day, like we had a couple more shows, and I was just like, I was mad about that. I was mad about the money thing. I was just mad and resentful in general about being on tour with them at this point. The next part of this story where things really got really heated. We made it across the country, and we were doing a show in Mesa, Arizona at the Mesa Amphitheater. And if anybody's ever been there, it's built really stupid. When the sun is setting, it's setting directly on the stage. So if you're in a band and you're playing while the sun is setting, like earlier in the night, the sun is directly on you. It's Mesa, Arizona in August. It was 120 degrees Fahrenheit out. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what that is in Celsius, but it's like close to 50, if not. During Red's set, I'm on stage because I'm like bass teching, and the bass player's rig starts going out because it's overheating. I mean, you can't, sometimes you can't avoid that stuff. Like, bands have laptops go down, rigs go down, because if there's direct sunlight on it like that, it's ridiculous. Me trying to do anything I can, I get a couple fans and put it behind the rack and put it on there. And Randy, in the heat of the moment while he was playing, was like turning around and yelling at me to get things fixed. And I'm like trying to do anything I can to get this stuff working. Well, I finally, I get like a solar block and a fan and get it on there, and things start working. At one point, he's already yelled at me to get his rig working. A couple songs later, he does a bass spin, like same as a guitar spin, like where you spin it around your body. And when he does it, his wireless pack with his AA batteries opens up and they fly out everywhere. So his bass cuts out again. So he starts yelling at me again, thinking his rig went down, not realizing that his batteries came out. So I grab a couple new batteries, I run out there, I put him in his pack, I close it, I see the light come on, and I tap on him to tell him he's good. He doesn't really know what's going on. He thought his rig went down because of the heat again. He's mad at me, I'm frustrated at him, and at the end of the set, we always used to do this thing where he would take off his bass and kind of stand mid-stage, and he would fucking toss it off stage to me. And I would catch it, like every night. This was the thing that happened every night. Well, this night, when we were going to do that, he takes off his bass and he doesn't just like nicely like doff it over to me like he normally does. He fucking throws it because he's mad. And me, I didn't even make an attempt to catch it. I literally stepped out of the way. It hit the floor and it exploded. Like literally neck of the bass snapped completely off, body cracked in half, like completely destroyed. He threw it and walked off stage, so I don't even think he knew what happened. So we're doing changeover and I pick up this busted bass. The guitar tech isn't even talking to me because he's just like, holy shit, like what is happening? We load out and I take this busted up bass and I walk onto the bus. Very immature of me at this point. I walk onto the bus. He's sitting in the front lounge with his brother and their manager was on the road with us too. And I threw the bass parts down on the floor of the bus and I was like, you feel good about that? Like, yeah, you fucked up your instrument. And he starts yelling at me. The manager's like, hey, get off the bus. Like, so I get off the bus, I go outside and the manager comes out and talks to me like, stay away from these guys the rest of the night. Then you need to keep your mouth shut. Like, this is not a good situation. So we get into this big, huge argument. He eventually comes off the bus. We're yelling at each other, stuff like that. It was really awkward because I'm like, God, we've got like fucking 2 shows left on this tour until we go home. And this is going to be like really weird being on this bus. Well, while me and the bass player were arguing backstage, like some of the bands overheard everything. And I had known the Papa Roach guys since I was in a band. We used to open for them from time to time. So I kind of already knew a couple of the guys, and Jacoby actually overheard this argument. And Jacoby from Papa Roach actually came up to me after Randy walked away and was like, hey man, I don't really know what's going on and it's not my business, but it doesn't seem good. Do you want to ride our bus for the next 2 tour dates? Like, just in case there's any drama going on that you want to avoid. And I'm just like, man, I appreciate it, but I think that would be weird because we have like days off and like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm like scared to be around them or anything like that. So thank you, but no, I'm going to stay on the bus. And yeah, that night I got on the bus, I went to my bunk. I didn't talk to anybody. And then the next morning, or the next show day was the last show of the tour was in I want to say it was San Francisco oh no, sorry, my bad. This was not the last night of the tour. This was the next show of the tour, which was at I believe it was the Epicenter Festival in LA. Yeah, Epicenter sounds right. Limp Bizkit was headlining that night. I was stoked. I got to see Limp Bizkit. It's like right when Gold Cobra had come out and it was awesome. But anyways, I wake up that morning and I go into the front lounge and the band and their guitar tech are up there. Like, I could tell they were talking about me and what's going on because the second I walked up there, they all looked at me and stopped talking. And Randy brought up something about me not knowing how to do my job correctly and the reason his bass was overheating. And he accused me of not checking his rig properly in Mesa. That's why it wasn't working right. Not the overheating thing, but he goes, I know you didn't check my rig. Like, that's why it wasn't working. Like, you didn't do your job. And I was like, yes, I did. And he turns to their guitar tech and he goes, tell him what you just told us. Because he just told us that he didn't see you check my rig yesterday. And I'm like, what the fuck? Of course he didn't see me check the rig. He was doing his job. So like we got into another huge argument about that. And the guitar tech, who apparently had said a bunch of stuff to them when I wasn't there, just was like, dude, I don't want anything to do with this while I was standing there. Funny thing about it though, is that me and that guitar tech have toured together recently, actually, like within the last 5 years, and like we're friends. Like, he's a good dude. Like, I'm not mad at him or anything. And keep in mind, this was like 14 years ago. We were all young and fucking dumb and immature and probably would have handled things differently now in our maturity. But so anyways, we got into a big argument about that. And that day went fine. Like, I just didn't talk to anybody and like, I just did my job. But I remember that night, I had called my dad, who my dad and I are very close, and I've always talked to him about like touring stuff and my job, and kind of told him what was going on. And I was like, dude, I feel as though if I want to continue my career and be in a better mental space, I think I need to stop working for these guys and just try and get a job with somebody else. I don't know who I would work for, but I think that's what I need to do. And he's like, dude, if that's what you think you need to do, then yeah, you need to do it. It sounds like you're in a bad position. So that night I went to their guitar player, Anthony. Like, after the show, everybody's backstage drinking. I remember we were like hanging out with the P.O.D guys and stuff. And I pulled Anthony aside And Anthony and I have always gotten along fine. Like he really wasn't involved in any of this like yelling back and forth and drama. It was really between me and their bass player, his brother. I pulled Anthony aside and I was just like, hey man, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I really think we've gotten to a point where I'm getting resentful at you guys are getting resentful at me. It's just like not working out. And I really appreciate you guys for giving me this chance on the road and stuff, but I think it's best for both of us if I quit after this tour and you guys get somebody else and I try and get a job somewhere else. Like, I really just think it's best for everybody. And he was very cool about it. He was like, dude, I get it. Like, I get where you're coming from. Like, I've seen what's going on with you and my brother. And yeah, it's a bummer, but it's just what it's gotten to. So he's like, you know, I'm not going to hold anything against you and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. So I had that conversation with him and it went well. So in my head, after the tour ended, which we only had one more show, I was going to prep them for their next tour, help them find somebody new, and just quit. So the next show, which was the final show of the tour, was in Sacramento. And we do the show. It's totally cool. And here's the thing about working for a kind of smaller band, in the grand scheme of things, is that a lot of these bands aren't flying their crew back and forth like on the road. Like, if you're on the bus, you're on the bus. The tour ended in Sacramento and they're based out of Nashville. After that show, I was going to ride the bus from Sacramento to Nashville. Unbeknownst to me, the whole rest of the band and crew was actually flying. So they got dropped off at the airport after the show. And then I rode the bus, just the bus driver and me, back from Sacramento to Nashville. And the bus driver at the time was kind of not great. And the bus was also kind of not great and broke down a bunch of times. So it took like 4 fucking days to get back to Nashville. But during those 4 days, I had brought like all of our merchandise out of the bus trailer onto the bus so I could like go through everything and do stuff. And you know, I was emailing the manager, emailing the tour manager, emailing the record label who handled their merchandise, and like nobody was responding to me about anything. And I'm going over like accounting things and like inventory things, like, hey, I'm going to help prep you guys for the next tour and stuff like this. And like nobody's responding to me, which is really, really weird. Look at the camera occasionally. That's where your YouTube audience is. Yeah, but the Twitch chat where you guys are live in the moment right now is right here. That's where I'm looking. Okay, I'll look at the camera from now on then. Sorry, it feels weird just staring into a camera sometimes. So nobody's responding to me at all. And I thought it was weird. And at one point when we were like maybe like 10 hours away from Nashville, I was sitting up with the bus driver talking, and the bus driver's like, have you talked to the guys at all? And I was like, no, actually nobody's responding to me. And he goes, it's weird. He's like, Randy keeps texting me, like their bass player. He keeps like texting me every like few hours asking for an ETA about when we're going to get back. And that is the moment where it hit me that they are ignoring me and they are probably waiting until we get back to call me about what's going on. I didn't know, like, I didn't expect like a you're fired phone call or anything, but I definitely expected a talk. Which was then when I was going to tell Randy what I had told his brother, that I was going to quit. So we get to Nashville, and I'm not kidding you. The second we pulled into where they parked their bus at their record label, my phone rings and it's Randy. And he's like, hey man, we got to have a talk. And I was like, yeah, I know. And we started talking about everything that was going on. And I was like, listen, dude, I just feel like it's time for me to go. And I will help you guys prep for your next tour, because the next tour that they had lined up was a couple of weeks away and it was a headlining tour. I was like, I'll do inventory on all your merchandise. I'll help you find somebody new. And he's like, well, let me stop you right there, because I've already talked to my brother and my brother told me what you said. And the way he phrased that was like it was a bad thing. Like I was talking shit, like told him that I, you know, when I was being honest with his brother, and was like, I just don't feel like it's right for me or you guys for me to be here anymore. He's like, my brother told me what you said. And yeah, we just talked and decided that we're just going to let you go right now. So you're fired. And I'm just like, okay. I was like, well, like I said, I'll like, whether I'm fired or not, like I'll help you prep for the next tour in a couple weeks and do all the merchandise inventory. And he goes, no. He's like, you're just fired. Like, we've already found somebody to replace you. Like, you're just done with us. And I'm just like, cool. So he's like, yeah, so just, you know, make sure your stuff's off the bus and we'll make sure you get your final pay and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay. And like hung up the phone. But it was funny because it kind of reminded me of that scene in the movie Waiting, where like Justin Long's character goes into the manager.
I quit.
You're flushing a golden opportunity down the toilet.
I hope you're right.
I am right. You're fired.
Why? I mean, I already quit, so.
No, you're fired. I write the book, okay? Here's how it went down. You walked in, you're fired.
Like that. I'll put that clip in there because it's funny, but like, that's what it reminded me of in the moment. I was just like, okay. And I'm not going to lie. I'll be 100% fully honest with you guys. After I hung up that phone and the reality set in that I just got like fired from the gig that I had just put like, 2 years of all of my effort into, I got pretty emotional and I sat there and had a cry for a minute. Like, cause it was like, I think it was a combination of like, wow, I can't believe this gig I've been doing for 2 years is just, I'm not going to be doing it anymore. And also like what the fuck am I going to do kind of thing. And also it was the first time, it was my first gig in this industry. So it was the first time I had experienced that. Like if I got fired from a gig now at 37 years old, like I'd be like, okay, bye. Like, cause it's the business. That's what happens. But you got to keep in mind, again, I was like 23 or something, 22, 23, something like that. And yeah, but yeah. And I did have that moment of like, what am I going to do? It's so crazy because looking at it now, like the way the music industry works, like something has always just wound up falling in my lap whenever I've needed work. There's always a band that's looking for somebody or always a company looking for somebody that needs something. So like, I think I was at home for about a week. Oh, and the funniest part of the story that I didn't even mention is I get off the bus, I go home, right? At the time, I was renting a room from their manager, which you would think that would be really awkward, but it actually wasn't because he is a nice guy and he's very business minded. So he's just like, dude, like when I got home, he apologized and stuff, but he was like, business is business, dude. Like you're more than welcome to stay here. Like I don't have any bad opinions. Like it is what it is. So he's a great dude. About 5 days later, I got a call to do merchandise for 3 different artists on a tour called Winter Jam, which if anybody doesn't know is like the largest like Christian music tour in the world that happens from like January to April every single year. And I was asked by Warner Music to do merchandise for their 3 artists that were on the tour. So I took it because I was like, I need something to do. Funny story, Red was on that tour. So my next tour after Red fired me was working for different bands on a tour that Red was on. So the first day of tour, I was literally going to step onto like an elevator to go somewhere and the elevator doors opened and Randy was right there. Like first day. And I hadn't talked to them since. And it was just like, hey, like we just kind of walked by each other without saying anything. Yeah, it was really cool. I didn't talk to any of those guys the whole tour. It was like really awkward. But did that tour and then I would say really after that tour was when my actual roadie career, like my professional roadie career started because my next gig after that was Nickelback. And at that point I learned some hard lessons and stuff like that. And hey, even after telling this entire story, I will tell you guys right now, I hold absolutely no ill will against the guys in Red at all. In fact, a couple years after all of this took place, they were at my wedding. They were not the band. They were just there. I made up with those guys. They were guests at my wedding. And, I had talked to them, a bunch. I will admit I haven't kept up with them much in the last like few years at all. But like, I have no ill will against those guys. Like, I'm still grateful that they gave me, my first opportunity to go on tour because without that, I wouldn't have done anything else that I'm doing. And I'm getting a little emotional actually, just like kind of wording it like this right now. They gave me my first opportunity. And without that, I wouldn't have been able to get any of the other gigs that I have. I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. Like, if you can take stuff like this and use it as a learning experience to better yourself, like everything works out in the end. So yeah, looking back on it, like, I was young, was naive. I thought I knew everything at that point, and I absolutely didn't. And what was really the kick in the teeth is when I did start that Nickelback tour, because I stepped into that tour being like, I've done arena tours before and I know what I'm doing. And I absolutely did not, and learned a lot very fast on that one too. So, but that'll be a story for another time. So, but yeah, so that's the story of the first gig I got fired from, and proudly the only gig I've ever gotten fired from. Everything else I've quit. Or just the tours ended and I needed to get another job or something like that. Yeah, to everybody that was in Twitch chat, thank you for being here for this one. For everybody on YouTube later, hopefully you enjoyed this. I think this one's longer than the first one, but hopefully the story comes across okay and it's pretty good. And yeah, so I'll probably keep this series going because it's fun to just tell some of these stories, and I got a lot more stuff we can talk about, a lot more embarrassing stuff I can probably talk about too, just embarrassing on my end. But yeah, to everybody on Twitch, thank you again. I appreciate it. To everybody on YouTube, thank you. I'm going to get going. Aside from Twitch, I'm also on a ton of social media. If you want to follow me on there, my handle on just about everything is @TankTheTech. But until next time, this was another edition of Roadie Storytime. Wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will see you very soon.